Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It is the Monday show on a Tuesday with me, Andrew Musgrove, and him, Aaron Stokes, coming to you on the back of a result that I did not expect, a 2-0 loss to West Ham United. We're going to attempt to get to the bottom of what happened, how Newcastle United lost a game that the majority were betting that last penny they would win. Once again, thanks to NORD VPN for sponsoring the podcast. Trust me, the virtual private network is a lot better at protecting your online identity than Newcastle United's defence. Hit the link in the description box for a discount on your plan. Aaron, welcome back. You well?
Well, coming into this podcast, not expecting to be talking about a Newcastle United defeat.
Do you know when I ask you if you will, I think we need to separate how Newcastle United makes you feel to just you. People want to know.
I'm absolutely fine. Yeah, I'm great. If I can just extract that part of my memory out.
It's hard though, isn't it?
It's hard.
That being said, isn't it funny when people talk about the effect it has on you? Like people always say, if Newcastle lose, your week's knackered. Yeah. Newcastle win, you're on high. And people think outside Newcastle, they're exaggerating, but it really does have that impact, doesn't it?
It does. And one, when you've had 2 weeks to wait for them to play and you've had an international break that you were wishing it was over. Then you have all week you're listening to your family, your friends, West Ham colleagues and friends saying that Newcastle are going to win 4-0.
Tom
Rennie. I was on a West Ham podcast last week and the host who was asking me questions refused to take any questions back because his audience was so fed up with him moaning about West Ham. So yeah, I went to St James's last night and I was speaking to some of the staff inside the press box and they were asking us what I thought about the game. And I said, I think everybody has been too confident. I think it's too much of a slam dunk. People are too excited. And I put something out on Blue Sky site and I said, I can't remember a game where everybody went in expecting Newcastle to win as much as last night.
But I would put back to you that why shouldn't we, as fans, expect Newcastle United to beat West Ham United, a team that are seemingly closer to a relegation battle than they are the European spots we'd put them in at the start of the season. A team that if they lose, the manager is out. You know, he's probably still on the ropes. People watched that podcast with Tom Rennie that I did, and it was a now of him laying into Lopetegui. However, now either he lured me into a false sense of security about this game, and he just played me.
No, Tom is generally just that negative all the time about West Ham.
Or Lopetegui just did something that no West Ham fan expected, and no Newcastle fan expected. I don't think it was an unrealistic expectation to demand and expect Newcastle United to win last night against West Ham. I just don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. Newcastle should be in favourites, and I thought they were going to win, but I think it was blown so far out of proportion. It was as if defeat was out of the question. And there's a quote that I've actually written down from Tom Rennie, who is a friend. I like him. I'm not having a slight at him. But when he said last week on your podcast or on our podcast, I wouldn't be worried about this game if you're a Newcastle fan. Treat this like a League One team turning up or a complete shambles. Look, I haven't watched enough of West Ham to disagree with that, but look at that squad. Jared Bowen, Lucas Paqueta, Carlos Soler, Todibo, Thomas Souček, a very good underrated player. West Ham have been underperforming. The West Ham squad on paper should be nowhere near where they are in the league. And I think people expected them to come, bang out of form, Newcastle in form, they'd be rolled over early doors. And I think we really underestimated them.
No,
Newcastle should have been favourites, but you've got to admit there was. Did you hear anybody this week say Newcastle would even draw?
No, but I'm going to disagree with the point that you say we underestimated them because my confidence was never arrogance. I fully accepted the players that they have in that team and knowing that they could hurt us. Jared Bowen, you've listed quite a few of them. I knew how dangerous they were, but given Newcastle United's form, given the feeling around the clubs, given the form of the three England internationals, given Sandro Tonali scored for Italy, there was a reason that I was so confident going in this game. Everything said Newcastle United should win. Wasn't disrespecting West Ham. I wasn't underestimating them because there's no easy games in the Premier League. But I do not for one moment think that everyone out there who demanded and expected to win last night did anything wrong in that train of thought, because that's what the best teams do. At home as well.
But are Newcastle one of the best
teams?
That's
the question.
This is what we're going to talk about for the next
ask.
hour.
I think the big question we have to ask, and we are going to talk, of course, in depth about the game, were the results against Arsenal, Nottingham Forest the exception to what is going to happen for the rest of the season? Because they seem to have an issue when they come up against teams that they should beat. And again, noisy games in the Premier League, I get it. But come on, you're at home against West Ham, great form that you're in, you should be winning that game, right? Struggled against Everton, struggled against other teams in and around where those teams are. Do Newcastle United have a mentality issue against those so-called lesser sides? And how much do the performances against top sides actually really tell us about Newcastle United this season?
Well, I hope it's not those games against Arsenal and Forest aren't the exception, you know. And I want to caveat this by, you know, this is naturally going to be a negative podcast because, as you say, so much expectation going into the game, a poor performance, you know, didn't take the chances, 2 really easy goals to concede. But I also want to make sure we zoom out and say, look, there was a reason we were so confident going into this game. They were fantastic against Forest. They were fantastic against Arsenal, fantastic against Chelsea. The only worrying thing is that when you look at the games, as you say, against teams below them, West Ham, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Newcastle are really struggling to pick these teams off, and especially when they go a goal behind. We saw it at Brighton, we saw it last night. And Eddie Howe was touching it last night, and he said that was a real opportunity missed last night because of, as you say, the form of both teams, because of the fact Newcastle were at home, because actually for the first 45, 55 minutes, they dominated possession, chances, XG, whatever you want to say. But yeah, I mean, look, West Ham, Brighton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, no wins, 2 goals. It is a problem.
I think it is a problem. I think I said this in the build-up to the game that it's a real big test for Newcastle United to try and shift the mindset and the mentality to where they can get up for these games against the likes of West Ham and Everton. It's no good welcoming Arsenal St James's Park and playing an absolute blind. They know they'll probably go and beat Liverpool in a couple of weeks' time, but then who comes after that? They'll probably end up losing to someone like Brentford. Maybe.
I mean, if there's one team that has actually shown a little bit of consistency in the Premier League, it is Liverpool. But I get your point.
So, I mean, I think the issue with the Arsenal game and then the Chelsea win in the Cup and then the Forest game, we had people saying Newcastle United are back. You said Newcastle United are back.
On track.
Did you?
I said back on track.
Okay, well, we had some people saying Newcastle United are back and the top 4 is on and what have you. And I think I was a bit more cautious, shall we say, because it's always about the next game. And then we've gone here against West Ham. Newcastle United have lost. Yes, the first half it was all right, and they had the chances, and they could have gone in 3-1 up. Second half was absolutely dire, and it does just make you think: were those 2 results in the league against high-flying clubs the exception to the rule? And hopefully they weren't. We will, of course, find out in due course whether they were. Has your opinion on the game shifted overnight? Like, what were you feeling at the full-time whistle to now?
No, if I'm honest, I think, I did an immediate podcast last night outside the ground, probably an hour after kickoff, and I think I'm probably in the same mindset today. I think Newcastle had really good chances to kick on in that first half. 2 very poor goals conceded, as I alluded to. But actually, I thought when they went in at half-time, I was reasonably happy with the performance. 3 or 4 really good chances to score. Isak has one ruled out. I thought, okay, if they continue that performance in the second half, they'll be okay. Really, really poor second half performance after the second goal went in, as we're going to touch on, subs that made the team worse, not better. And actually, after West Ham's second goal, it's hard to really think of a chance Newcastle United had on goal, never mind, a clear-cut opportunity.
I always felt up until that second goal that if Newcastle got a goal, and I felt they would get at least a point, but the second goal totally killed the game.
Them. I mean, if I'm honest, the first 10 minutes were really good from Newcastle, and I thought, okay, well, this is the game we all expected. Front foot, pressing, creating chances. West Ham really struggling to get out of their own final third. And then just like we saw Brighton the other week, just out of nothing. I mean, last time it was obviously a long ball up from Lewis Dunk. Newcastle didn't deal with it. This time, Thomas Souček pulls away from Lloyd Kelly, and it's, a really good header, but really poor defending. But But as I say, that first half, Anthony Gordon has a really good chance. Isak should have buried that one when he brings it down from Bruno. Lewis Hall went close. They had opportunities, but they couldn't back that up in the second half.
No, they certainly couldn't. We'll get more into the first half performance in a moment, but I just want to go back to the point about the mentality issue. And I want to ask you the question, and I kind of asked it, I'm not really sure I got an answer, but why shouldn't Newcastle United fans who are expecting their team to qualify for Europe expect to be beating West Ham? Why shouldn't they be thinking that?
But no. Yeah, I don't think. I think you're twisting what I'm saying. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying Newcastle should have won that game last night. They were favourites to win that game. I thought they would win that game, but I think the amount of confidence people had, it was as if West Ham were a League One side. It was. I thought Newcastle were going to win, but I think some of what we saw this week was disrespectful to West Ham. And I understand it. They're out of form. The manager's on the brink. They've been horrendous. They're coming up on a Monday night to one of the most in-form teams in the league at one of the best grounds in the league. I get it. So I've got no problem with thinking Newcastle should have won the game. But I think people were just completely underestimating this West Ham team. They were.
It's a fine line between
how can you look at that? How can you
and
look at that squad with all the players we've just named and say Newcastle are going to beat them 4-0? And I'm not saying you did it, but how many people this week said, "Oh, it'll be clear cut. It'll be 3-4."
Yeah, but you can't say I did it because
I don't know if you did. But
I was fully expecting them to win and win comfortably, but it was based on everything that was put out in front of me. It's not just about West Ham; it was about how well Newcastle were doing. And when West Ham fans are telling you it is bad, I was speaking to a couple of West Ham fans before kickoff, literally 20 minutes before kickoff, and they said it'll be at least 2-0 to Newcastle United. They were not feeling it. Many of them probably wanted them to lose. So Lopetegui is down the road and he's probably now in the job till at least Christmas. So I don't think that the confidence was arrogance on anyone's part. I think top teams can respect poor opposition while at the same time saying, you're coming to our home as well, by the way, and we're going to beat you. And that's exactly what top teams do. Liverpool versus Southampton. Yes, Southampton had to give it a good go, but Liverpool win that game. Liverpool fans expect to win that game. So why should Newcastle United fans expect to win the game against West Ham?
I'm not saying they shouldn't expect to win the game. I'm really not. I thought Newcastle would win the game. I expect them to win it.
But can you? Okay, I get what you're saying. You're saying that the expectation came from some with a disrespect to West Ham, but
not everyone. But a lot of people. I think it took a lot of people back, that result last night, because they thought West Ham were going to roll over. That West Ham squad is a really, really good squad, just going through a really poor vein of form. So please don't think that I'm saying Newcastle United fans shouldn't have been confident last night or expecting to beat West Ham. I expect them to beat West Ham. But some of the coverage pre-game, in hindsight, was really, really over the top, disrespectful to a team like West Ham.
Well, let us know on YouTube or on social media your thoughts on that. Eddie Howe was asked about the contrasts and results that Newcastle get against the so-called top sides and those teams that they should be beating. And this is what he had to say in the press conference after his side lost 2-0 to West Ham.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we haven't grabbed the games in these moments as well as we could have done. Of course, they present a different challenge for us, both mentally, tactically, technically. And although tonight's game is easy to say in hindsight, but if we score the first goal, probably the feeling and the result is very different. Because I thought there was a decent feeling about the group tonight before the game. I thought there was a decent vibe in our early exchanges in the game, so I'm thinking we're set for a good performance here. And of course, then the reality of what we've delivered is totally different now. So you've got to be careful that you don't look at the game wrongly and overreact to the result, but ultimately disappointed we haven't found a way to win that game tonight.
What did you take from Howe's comments there?
Look, I don't think it'll be popular, but I agree with him. And I've seen Howe getting a lot of stick in the last 24 hours for those comments. The comments that he said where he thought Newcastle United played well for 60 minutes. I don't disagree with a lot of what he's saying, and I get that it's natural for other people to maybe jump on him for saying that when they've just been on the end of a 2-0 defeat against a game where, again, we've just been saying they on paper should have won. But I think he's right. I think the vibe, as he put it, felt right early doors. We'll never know, but I think if that Isak goal stands, can you really see Newcastle throwing away a goal like that under the lights against a West Ham team who are low on form? If Anthony Gordon scores that chance against Fabianski when there's a mistake at the back, again, would it kicked on? Even, dare I say, if Callum Wilson gets that penalty in the second half, I know it's a bit of a mountain to climb, but if he scores that penalty at 2-1 with 15 minutes left, you wouldn't rule Newcastle out getting something. So, again, the performance for the first 55 minutes wasn't too bad. They created enough. They just didn't take the chances. So, people might disagree with what Eddie Howe said, but I think he was quite right there.
I agree with him in terms of him saying it's not time to overreact. It's not, and we saw the good performances a few weeks ago. I think we just need to see that consistency. But the other concern is it's not just a mindset; it's the way the opposition play. And West Ham got it on near on perfect. They got the goal. Then they just sat in a low block and broke when needed. And Newcastle are not breaking teams down. And this is something we're seeing time and time again this season. But it's not Eddie Howe's fault, is it? He hasn't got the tools there to really create this possession-based side who are good at unlocking opposition. So I'm not really sure what he can do. But at the same time, even though he hasn't really got the place to do that, he needs a plan B. Because more often than not, unless you're facing probably the top six, the opposition are just going to sit back and say, right, come and attack us, and knowing that Newcastle aren't very good at it.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the games they've won this season, as we've touched on, are games where they probably haven't seen as much of the ball. Teams aren't sat back as much. I've been trying to find the quotes from Eddie Howe last night because he was asked that specific question about teams with the low block. I can't find them, so you might have them on there. But it's become a problem. I mean, we're 12 games into this season, and I still don't think we've, apart from that little stretch pre-international break, we're really struggling to see Newcastle, especially at home, punish teams like they used to. They're defending so well. You've got all this attacking talent on the pitch, and I know we're going to go into sort of the figures about that later in the show, but they don't look like they have the tools. They're big players on stepping up. I think last night Alexander Isak really poor in a number of aspects of the game. Anthony Gordon really quiet. Some of it his fault, some of it not. In the second half, I don't think he knew where he was meant to be playing. He was getting chopped and changed, as he has been for weeks, really. I was looking at some of the comments about Anthony Gordon this morning. Again, they're natural. They're bound to come after a defeat like that and a performance like that. But people saying that he's massively regressed since signing that new contract. Is he still thinking about that move in the summer and all this? If I'm Anthony Gordon, and you don't know whether you're going to be playing on the left or the right or the 10 or in the centre every which week, is it any wonder that he's not playing his best form? And again, that's not on him, that's on Howe. But again, we're now finding ourselves talking about the summer again. He hasn't been back. They haven't got a right winger. And then you look at the subs, £135 million worth of talent brought on last night. The game doesn't change. So there's issues, have they papered over the cracks a little bit with those 3 wins? We don't know. We probably won't know until later in the season. But certainly last night was, bringing them back down to earth with a bump.
I think Gordon's role in the second half was a little bit strange when he moved him into a 10 and he essentially had a free role, but he didn't look comfortable.
No,
he didn't quite know what he was doing. He wasn't the only one, and we'll get more into that in a moment because a lot of people are talking about the substitutes. But I do just want to try and bring around to a couple of positives, because there were some, like you say, the first 15, 20 minutes was decent.
Yeah.
A lot of people would say the entire first half was quite decent. Eddie Howe would say the first hour was decent. As you said, 3 golden chances plus 1 ruled out for offside. Any one of them goes in, as you say, and I think Newcastle win that game. So the fact that they're creating chances, Aaron, still leaves me confident of what's to come over the next few months. But the stats don't lie. 13 goals scored in 12 games. Only Palace, Southampton and Everton have scored less than that. Is it a concern?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course it is. When you've got so much attacking talent on the pitch, of course it's a worry. I mean, last night, that front four that Eddie Howe switched to try and get back in the game, Gordon, Isak, Joelinton, Barnes, there's £200 million worth of talent there. And on paper, they should be enough to get you back in the game. Now, the reason I say that is because Newcastle have scored 13 goals in the league this season, and 12 of them came from those 4 players. The only other one was scored by Fabian Schär. So I mean, on paper, that looks good. Isak's got 4, Barnes has got 4, Gordon's got 2, and Jordan's got 2. But actually, when you dive into the stats, that maybe is covering over the cracks a little bit. Gordon obviously scored against Forest, but his last goal before that was the 21st of September. Anthony Gordon's last goal was a penalty against City at the end of September. Jordan obviously scored against Forest, but is he going to get you 10 goals a season? Probably not. He's probably not even going to be playing in the front four for the entirety of the season, given that he'll probably get moved back into the midfield at some point. So then that only leaves you with Alexander Isak, who, you know, has scored 4 this season in fine form before the international break. But then when you move away from those players, that means no goals so far this season from Bruno, Willock, Tonali, Longstaff, Asula, Murphy, Almiron, or any of the backline other than Cher, which again goes to highlight that problem that they don't really have goals from midfield. They don't have goals from other areas of the pitch.
So is that another position then to add to the shopping list, a goal scoring centre midfielder?
No, look, I think they're well stocked in midfield, but it's not a new problem that we've highlighted. I mean, we've highlighted it for months on this pod. It's not a new thing. Eddie Howe has insisted that they're working on it behind the scenes. He says they're trying to get Bruno to improve his goals. They're trying to get Sean Longstaff in better positions. It's not working.
The stats aren't good, but is there a case to say that Eddie Howe again has done all he can to build up to this game on the training pitch, and he's coached a side there who should be maybe 3-1 up at half time, and it's down to the players yet again not taking their chances. And I know there's a lot of stick for Eddie Howe over the last 12 hours or so, but like I say, what can he realistically do? He's clearly done his homework on West Ham. They've looked decent, Newcastle, in the opening 20 minutes or so, and had chances to go ahead and just haven't taken them.
And it's not just West Ham. You know, again, the games you've mentioned, Brighton, on Everton. Another day they score goals in that game. Everton on another day, either Gordon scores his penalty or he puts that one-on-one in the back of the net rather than over the bar. Goodison. So, as you say, they're creating. The fact they're not scoring is a worry. And again, when you dive into the goals there, Gordon, no goals since September. Barnes, 1 goal since the 21st of September. When those are 2 of the 4 players that have actually been finding the net for you, it's a bit of a worry. And again, Will Asula, clearly not up to the standard that they want. Callum Wilson being back is a huge positive if he can stay fit. I thought he looked okay last night. He looked sharp. He won the ball back a couple of times. He made some good runs. Again, I think he should have had a penalty.
I tell you what, though, that run that he did to chase down the keeper, he really got some wind in his sails. I was watching with my hands over my eyes. I was thinking, he's going down here.
I think there'll be well, when he got fouled by Mavropanos, I was thinking, oh God, please don't say he's popped his shoulder out or something like that. So that's another positive, but the goals are definitely a concern. And again, look, anyone at Newcastle United, if you're listening, January's on the corner, get the checkbook out. Goal scoring right winger, problem solved.
Go on, name him. Right here, right now. Put your man at the top of the list. Who is it? Do it.
Does it? No.
The people want to hear you say it.
Brian Mbeumo.
There we go.
Jared Bowen. Anthony Semenyo.
Good, wasn't he? Jared Bowen. He was good.
Decent.
It's typical that he would be good after Sam Mulner poo-pooed the idea of signing Jared Bowen in January and said he's not for Newcastle United. He says he's effectively said he was too old at 27, 28.
Crikey.
Obviously, he's never going to leave.
Football Manager.
I know. He says he's not going to leave West Ham.
He's Mr. West Ham, isn't he? So.
Callum Wilson coming back is a huge plus. Has to stay fit, and what it gives Alexander Isak is that competition, which is key. Gives Eddie Howe as well another option off the bench, or even to start Callum Wilson from the off if need be. It is going to be a big boost going into such a crucial run of games as well into the new year.
Yeah, massively. I mean, they've really missed him this season purely because of, well, 1, the goals he offers, but 2, just having that extra body to come on and try and change a game. Eddie Howe still seemingly isn't ready to throw William Asula in, despite the glimpses we've seen of him. So you've just got to keep everything crossed that Wilson stays fit until at least Jan.
He was one of the substitutions, and it's fair to say that if it isn't working for you in the game, then you have to change the game by the players you bring on. But not for the first time this season, Eddie Howe's substitutions didn't work. It was quite chaotic in the last 20 minutes, to say the least. Sort of a mix of panic and desperation, and not very Eddie Howe at all.
Not very Eddie Howe at all. I mean, the subs, so, let's go through them. Barnes for Willock.
I thought that was a bizarre one.
See, I don't really have an issue with that. What would you have done and said? Willox needs to come off. He's got an injury.
Bring Tonali on. Put him in the 6, and then put Bruno on the left-hand side, and obviously keep Sean on the right.
And then Joe Linton goes left, and
they can Gordon and Joe Linton can just switch as they had been doing.
I mean, yeah, fair enough. I didn't have a problem with Barnes, and I think, you of all people say he's going to come good. Those are the games where he needs to be standing up. And I mean, I don't know what you felt, but
I felt he was quite invisible. To be quite honest with you,
he tried. They broke a few times down that left with him. I mean, that Gordon chance, the only real chance I can remember Newcastle having, 2 minutes before West Ham scored. Barnes broke, got a little bit lucky with a pass to Gordon that was nearly intercepted. But other than that, can you really remember doing anything of note? Then you had Sandro Tonali for Sean Longstaff. Again, it felt like a sort of pre-planned, okay, West Ham have went 2 ahead, we'll make a change in midfield. No problem with that. Tonali, don't think he covered himself in glory. Probably a tough game for him to get involved in. Murphy for Joelinton. So was that the switch? Yeah, Murphy for Joelinton with 20 minutes left. I think we'll disagree on this one as well. I thought Murphy was all right.
I mean, he didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but he didn't do anything.
Crosses in the area for them at a time where Wilson was ready to pounce on them.
Get the ball away a couple of times. I mean, it's one of those. You're not going to hang him out to dry, are you? Because you could criticise several players in that team. Really hard
and then
to
obviously
man of the match.
Wilson for Gordon. Gordon, as we said, Gordon looked a little bit lost second half. He didn't really know where he was playing. I couldn't really work out how the 4 of them up top were working together. It looked a little bit just jointed. Good to see Wilson back, as we say. He offered a little bit of a different threat. And then Bruno obviously comes off with a glute problem, and Trippier comes on in the middle. So
and then Livramento off to left back, Lewis Hall into centre mid. It was just a little bit chaotic. I mean, when Tonali came on, or maybe it was when Murphy, when Tonali came on, and the instructions were given out, and he moves Gordon into that kind of number 10 role, and then Joe Linton's total go over to the right, and you can just see that the players are a little bit confused. Joe Linton's sticking his hand up in the air, I think, saying, "Is this right?" Like, it just didn't look as organised as we've come to expect from Eddie Howe, and it's probably because he's chasing that game and he knows that something needs to change. But yeah, there were a lot of. It wasn't just substitute. It wasn't just bringing the subs on. It was then a total kind of formation change or positional change for players. I don't really know how much you can expect from a team when that happens, because there's a lot to get your head around. But yeah, good to see Wilson back, as you say. And I mean, the Kieran Trippier for Bruno, when you end up having to then switch Livramento to left back and Hall in the middle, questions that maybe you use your subs too early, but then you would say, well, the game wasn't working, so you need to make your subs a little bit earlier than maybe you'd like to.
I think it also shows, no Lewis Miley last night on the bench, purely because of the options that they had on the bench.
The bench
very strong bench.
strong.
It looked strong. As I say, £135 million worth of talent were brought on. Miley obviously couldn't get a slot in the bench because they needed Target and Trippier, who were the only 2 defenders on the bench. Did he just run out of options late in the game and need to change it up? Maybe.
What did you think of moving Isak out onto the left, Wilson at the centre?
The full second half. Ever as soon as West Ham went 2-0 up, it just felt a little bit chaotic, a little bit confusing. It looked like there wasn't really a plan. It was just, let's just try and move people out. I suppose if I'm trying to put a silver line on it and a positive slant on it, they've got players who can do that. I mean, he's actually proven time and time again he can play out wide. Gordon has proven he can play pretty much anywhere. But when you're chasing a game like that and you're swapping it every 5-10 minutes, it wasn't a good look. But again, it didn't feel very Eddie Howe. I know a lot of people have their criticism, say that his substitutions are too rigid, too pre-planned, especially with those midfielders. But we've seen a lot of times this season him make changes and the game's been turned on its head. You look back at Wolves, you look back at games like that, at Bournemouth as well, when they could have probably snatched it down at their place. Last night didn't feel like that. Last night, you did not get even a sense that they were going to get back into that game.
It just felt like he was just trying to throw anything and everything at it.
But it wasn't working. It felt like a little bit of a training passage where West Ham were just defending and Newcastle were attacking, and then West Ham had a spell where they probably could have scored a third.
I mean,
if I'm
by the
honest.
end, West Ham were playing like they were Brazil.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one
The
moment
Olays came
when
out.
yeah, well, that was embarrassing to see that the Olays came out. It must have been about 20 Olays before the passage of play was stopped. There's one point where Wan-Bissaka was allowed to go from his right back position to the edge of the box pretty much unchallenged. It just wasn't very good, especially towards the end of the game. But going back to the starting 11, I had no problems with the starting 11.
No, do I?
But
And
I've seen
again,
a few people maybe in hindsight saying,
but we can't. You can't do that. That we've been on such a high about Newcastle. We have waxed lyrical about what they've been like. If Eddie Howe had changed that team last night and they'd got beat, there would be hell on. He had to keep that team, and for him to only make the one enforced change that he needed to do, Kelly for Burn, was the right thing to do. I'm not going to criticise the team. The only thing I would maybe say is Joelinton better on the left, even though it means sacrificing Gordon, because we know what he can do with Willock and Hall. Gordon was on the left for the majority of last night, and maybe Joelinton was out the loop a little bit.
I've seen quite a few people raise this question about Gordon, and you've mentioned it, that certain people think he's regressed this season. They say, well, he's got his new deal now. Where's the uptake in performance? I actually think we've seen a little bit of uptake. Yes, he was off colour against West Ham.
He's been good in a lot of games. People forget that.
But a lot of people are asking that question. Do you prioritise Gordon, or do you prioritise the team? Is it as black and white as that? Is it as simple as that?
I mean, I personally have written so much and spoken so much about how much I love that left side of Hall, Joelinton and Willock. And it's worked, and it's worked in big games, and it worked in the Cup at Chelsea, and it worked at Arsenal. And I just think it means sacrificing Gordon.
That's a challenge for Eddie Howe, isn't it?
Again, it's a massive challenge, and it's not what you want to do. You've got a player who has improved so much, is now an England international. I don't want to see Gordon chopped and changed every week. I mean, it was anyone's guess last night where he was going to start left, right. As we say, he finished the game in the 10. I feel for Gordon because, and it's not through fault of his own. And I also don't think the criticism of Gordon is correct. I think people have got just short memories. I think he was really, really good in the drought City. He was really good against Arsenal. People forget that because he's had a couple of minor wobbles this season. But again, there's reasons for that.
He scores that goal.
Exactly. He scores that goal and people forget. Exactly.
So, maybe he should have lifted it over and good save. We'll dive into the comments before we talk about the goals that Newcastle United conceded. Tim says there's so many unanswered questions around the team at the moment, and Eddie doesn't seem to be able to answer them. We've got Craig saying it was a missed opportunity. Don't think people realise how big a loss that was with the league as it is. What do you think about that? I mean, it's still very, very tight. I mean, West Ham now only 3 points behind Newcastle. I think Newcastle are still only 4 points off the top 4, something like that.
Let's try and flip that as a positive. Newcastle, despite losing last night, are only 4 points off third. They're only 5 points off second. The fact that the league is so tight, it's so unpredictable, is a good thing. And yes, I know it means teams are catching up with them. West Ham are now only 3 behind them. But look, they're 10th, as I say, 5 off second. No need for panic stations yet.
No, it's not any need for panic stations, but it was a huge missed opportunity. Huge. Because you got Liverpool in a couple of weeks, you got Palace. I mean, now you go into that Palace game thinking, well, what are they going to do? Palace aren't on it doing anything special at the moment, and you beat West Ham, you go down to Sellers Park in really good spirits, but now you're thinking that's going to be a nervous afternoon in London. There's a knock-on effect, and if teams start winning, Newcastle United start falling down because they could be outside the top 10 by the end of the weekend next weekend. So you need to be winning these sort of games because then it sort of lowers the pressure of the likes of the Liverpool game and the top teams coming or the top teams that you have to visit when you are beating sides around you or behind you, and unfortunately they can't seem to be beating those lower teams in the league. We've got a lot of people asking about kind of the mindset of the players and who is at fault. As we've discussed, we've got Craig saying, is it the players? Is it how set players are a disgrace? Tim says we should be playing better with the players that we have. I think one of the interesting things is what Kevin says here. We're still stuck with the underdog mentality from 2 years ago. Whoever we play, that's why we do better against the big teams and fail like we did last night. We need to change this. Do you agree? I agree for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are. I don't. Yeah, I do. I think it's that. Maybe it's not an underdog mentality, but there is something where we all know they are much more up when they face Liverpool, Arsenal, City, maybe throw Chelsea, Manchester United into the mix, and we keep talking about the teams they can't beat. So yeah, I think there was an issue there.
I was saying in the press box before the game, it felt like because of the confidence going into the game, it felt like one of those where if they didn't get the first goal, and they were struggling to score, or they conceded the first goal, it might be one of those games where the crowd gets really tense. I don't know if I felt that. I think the crowd was all right until 2-0. The Gallagher corner was trying to rouse them. But I mean, look, we've touched on it all. Paul Eddie Howe touched on it last night. They do seem to perform better when they're not expected to get a result. So yeah, I mean, maybe there is an argument for that underdog mentality.
John says we should have won, but yet again we bottle it. There's a lot of criticism for Eddie Howe as well in the comments. People hitting out at his tactics, which they're not very happy at. Let us know in the comments what you think of Eddie Howe's team yesterday, of his formation, of his in-game management. What did he get wrong? What did he get right? What I want to do now is talk about the goals they conceded, because they weren't good, and they weren't good in particular for one man, and that is Lloyd Kelly, who had a massive opportunity last night to really stake a claim for that centre-back position, to make the decision to bring Dan Burn back in at left-sided centre-back. That little bit harder for Eddie Howe, of course. Dan Burn missing through suspension, but he will be back for the game this weekend against Crystal Palace, and undoubtedly will be in the starting 11, because Lloyd Kelly did not cover himself in glory. First goal came from a corner, and Souček is allowed to head home. Free header. Lloyd Kelly inexplicably kind of stands off him and just allows him to power one home. What on earth has gone on there?
Yeah, really, really poor defended from a Newcastle point of view, and something Eddie Howe spoke about being unhappy with at full time. I think not just for the goal, but I think the entire game they missed Dan Burn. I think, again, it just goes to show he's maybe a little bit underrated. There's no doubt he comes back in for Palace on Saturday. Eddie Howe was asked about it. He says, yes, Dan Burn was a big miss. You see the first goal, and I think Dan's presence helps us in those situations for sure. His leadership qualities on the pitch can't be underestimated. He's an organiser, a really good communicator with his backline, his midfield, and my initial assessment is that we missed him today. Agree?
Yeah, they did miss him, and I'm just more disappointed for Lloyd that he just didn't take the opportunity that presented him.
I mean, the thing with Kelly is he struggled at the start of the season, and he sort of, is it fair to say he was a little bit forgotten about? Lewis Hall edged him out with that debate at left back pretty early. Dan Burn and Fabian Schär looked really solid. But then he comes in that game against Chelsea in the Cup and plays really well. And all of a sudden you think, okay, he might be finding his feet. So I agree. It's not just an opportunity missed for the team last night. It's an opportunity missed for him, because if he'd had another good performance built on that Chelsea showing, it would have done his confidence the world of good.
But Niall saying Kelly was so poor, probably at fault for both goals. The second one, yes, he had an element of fault.
I don't think it was his fault.
But it wasn't his fault.
But he could have done better.
Bruno gives the ball away for a start on the halfway line. Longstaff allows Paqueta just to kind of walk through. Probably should bring him down. I'm not sure if he was on a yellow card or not, but he needs to make a foul there. And then as the ball goes out to the right to Bowen, Longstaff follows the ball and just doesn't see Wan-Bissaka running through. Joe Linton's let Wan-Bissaka run through as well, and then Wan-Bissaka's got the time just to pop it in the back of the net. Lloyd Kelly doesn't come out and meet him, kind of stands off and then twists away. It's just an absolute shower of poor decisions being made. I was going to say something else there. Poor decisions being made in that passage of play, right from the moment Bruno loses the ball. I mean, you can even go back to the clearance from Nick Pope, there's just so many errors in that passage of play, and Eddie Howe must be so frustrated that actually what's happened is that West Ham have won the game really because Newcastle have switched off twice.
Yeah.
And West Ham have managed to be clinical.
Yeah, I mean, until that second goal, West Ham really, weren't on top of the game at all. I mean, I know we've just touched on at the end of the game, they probably could and should have added more, but it's hard to think of real clear-cut chances they actually had before that Wan-Bissaka goal, which again just goes to add to the frustration of the entire evening, really. As you say, the combination of errors. I've seen a lot of people slating Lloyd Kelly, saying it's his fault. I don't think it was his fault, but I think he could have done better positionally-wise. I think he could have got out quicker. He could have probably put up, he he didn't really make too much of an effort to block the ball. But I think, as you say, Bruno lost it far too easily. Longstaff's ball watching.
And Wan-Bissaka should never be allowed
of
to
course.
run that distance unchallenged.
Yeah, Joe Linton watches him go, doesn't track him back quick
But
enough.
again, we've seen these errors, maybe not too many times where goals have come from them, but certainly saves have had to be made or the woodwork's been hit, where players have been allowed to run freely into the box, or Newcastle United's defenders or midfielders are following the ball rather than the man. And I've gone on about
It's
it
one of
so
your
many
big
times
gripes,
this month.
isn't it?
I just
You hate it, yeah.
don't understand, because unless I'm missing something, and look, I've never been a professional footballer as much as I wanted to be. But one of the things you were taught as a very young kid is, you don't all rush towards the ball don't ball watch. The space is there for players to exploit, and that's exactly what Wan-Bissaka did yesterday. And it was really frustrating that there was just so many errors leading up to that goal. Bruno shouldn't lose the ball. Joe Linton or Longstaff should be tracking the men. And Newcastle United, from that point on, never looked like getting back into the game.
Are we starting to maybe see a little bit of a similarity from the season that finished in the Champions League when it was Pope, Trippier, Cher, Botman, Burn, and they were so good together? Are we now seeing that with Pope, Tino, Cher, Burn, Hall? Because that back five that they've had has been so solid. And again,
you mean cracks forming?
No. Like, as in Newcastle are just so much better when it's that solid back five. Because Kelly's came in last night and they struggled. Cher obviously was out the team earlier in the season. They went to Fulham, conceded.
It's a difficult one to answer because Dan Burn has been absolutely colossal at the back, but there's always something in the back of my mind that says he's going to get caught out.
But,
Chelsea away, for example.
But we've spoken about how they've scored 13 goals, and it's what did we say? It was the third lowest in the Premier League. Only Everton, Palace, and Southampton scored less. Only Liverpool and Arsenal have conceded less in the league than Newcastle. So that defence is working. But what I'm saying is, does it need to be that back five that I've mentioned?
Yeah, most probably. I think that's probably your best back five until Botman is fit and ready. But I can't see that being until maybe February time. I think they might step up their interest in a centre back in January. We know the right wing needs someone to come in, but I think there's enough concern at centre back where they might go in for Marquis again.
You can only pick one in Jan. Who do you get? Right winger, centre back.
It's difficult because I think
it's got to be a right winger. Botman's coming back.
Yeah, but how long is he going to take to get back? I mean, this is a massive injury. Look at Tyrone Mings. He's taken a long time to get back from the same injury. I think it happened just a couple of months prior to Botman. It is difficult because I don't think Fabian Schär's at the same level that we've come to expect from him. Dan Burn has been brilliant, but is it on quicksand sort of thing? Will he get found out? He will if a pacey striker goes up against him. For me, if they can strike a deal for Marquis at a good price, I would maybe look at that.
What's a good price?
50, 60 million. I think at the most. I wouldn't go above 60 million. Palace really messed Newcastle United around the last time. I'm not sure Paul Mitchell will be hanging around for too long with Steve Parish. I think they'll be pretty quick with negotiations. Here's the offer. Take it or leave it. If not, we'll move on.
It's really interesting to see what they do in January because it does look like if anyone comes in, they've got to find an outgoing. Will they be able to keep Callum Wilson fit to make that him? Does Kieran Trippier maybe still have an eye for the door? Can they find a suitor for Miguel Almiron? Those three players are going to be key to what happens in January.
One thing I did notice when Kieran Trippier came on, there was a lot more talking on the pitch. You saw with the corner, they had a short corner, brilliantly worked, and Lewis Hall just popped it into the.
I've forgotten about that chance.
What is he doing at that point? But then there's another corner just after that, I think, and he wants to take it quickly, but they're not switched on, and you can see straight away he's saying, well, "Come on!" He's trying to get them kind of up for it, trying to get them switched on, and it's just that little bit of leadership that maybe they have been lacking. But it's not like Tino Livramento did anything wrong. I thought he was probably Newcastle's second best player on the night, behind Lewis Hall, who had another exceptional game. But yeah, it's disappointing that Kelly's missed out or wasted his opportunity. Sorry, and Dan Burn will be straight back in and fully deserved because of the way he has played.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned the crowd. because I thought it was very, very flat, and I include myself in that. You know, as the game went on, wasn't quite feeling it. I mean, I stayed till the end.
It's always a struggle, and we've seen it a lot. We saw it at Brighton. These games at St James's Park, and it's not a new thing. It's happened for the last couple of years when fans go in, as they did last night, expecting a win, and all of a sudden they find themselves behind. You do sort of get the sense that it just becomes a little bit tense in the air. You know, the Gallagher corner last night was trying to rouse them, but
didn't really come alive though
No,
until about the
they really
70th,
didn't.
75th minute. And it's hard for that corner to try and ignite the whole stage.
And
I
look,
mean,
it's easy to sit here and say the crowd should be better, but as you say, when you're sat in the stands last night and they're getting beat
can feel
2-0,
it.
the last thing you want to do is, you know, you just think, let's get this over.
yeah, and by the way, I'm not criticizing anyone who was there.
And as I say, I didn't think the atmosphere was that bad last night. I thought it was all right, but
I
it's
think it
always
started
hard.
well.
Yeah,
The display was fantastic.
display was amazing. Yeah,
First 15 minutes. And look, basically it's all entwined, isn't it? Newcastle United start quickly in the faces, get an early goal, get some early chances, get a
well, that's the thing. I mean,
that
that display pre-match, amazing. Isak must have loved that. He scored after 4 minutes. If that goal had been flagged onside and counted, I mean, Newcastle could have had that 4-0 win we were all talking about. It just goes to show those fine margins. But as you say, I mean, you know, West Ham's first chance of the game goes in. Newcastle had their backs to the wall straight away, and the crowd knew that.
But I thought half time came at the wrong time for Newcastle because it was just starting to get a little bit feisty.
Yeah.
Lloyd Kelly was having a go at Mikel Antonio. Miguel Agorio was having a go at the linesman.
Yeah.
Bruno just got in with a wonderfully, brilliantly hard challenge, but fair.
On his best, mate.
Yeah, and everything was just starting to ramp up a little bit. And that's when Newcastle are kind of at their best. If they can't be counter-attacking, the next best thing is to get Newcastle properly riled up, because then the crowd get involved and the crowd are with them. And it just seemed to me that's where the game was heading. And then the half-time whistle goes.
And the players were really frustrated in the first half with Craig Pawson. Obviously, Lopetegui got quite early on.
Game.
He had a really... And it wasn't just biased towards one team. It was,
it was across the board.
West Ham was struggling with him. Newcastle was struggling with him. Longstaff was absolutely remonstrating with him for a good few minutes after he lost the ball to Antonio. And then as we touched on, that penalty in the second half is a penalty. I don't know how he hasn't seen it. I don't know how VAR hasn't at least said, I would maybe go to the monitor and have a look. And if
it's a disgrace.
It was a penalty.
Disgrace.
It was a penalty.
But how many times are we going to sit here and say, what is the point of VAR? You're looking at that. We don't even need to look at it. We could see from the stands, he's got arms over him. Why haven't they gone to the referee and said, he's hugged him to the floor? Because actually, in real time, you think, is the ball too high for
That's
him?
what I thought.
And is that why they've not given it? But you watch the replay, he's impeded him.
Well, the VAR didn't not give it because of the height. They said via their match centre Twitter feed, the referee's call of no penalty for the challenge by Mavropanos on Wilson was checked and confirmed by VAR, deeming that the contact was not sufficient.
Not sufficient?
Manhandled up the floor.
You should see it in the squared circle, let alone, you know, it's
I'm yet to see anybody say, I think it wasn't a penalty, which goes to show.
Not sufficient? Is that what they've actually said?
That's what they said, yeah.
It's like they're trying to make people hate VR even more. I mean, that is absolutely
Is that possible with
ridiculous.
you, the most ardent anti-VR man ever?
I think the technology is brilliant. The premise is brilliant. It's those using it and how on earth they can sit there. What more does he have to do to have sufficient contact? He's got two arms around.
Well,
goodness, because you're right.
Not sufficient contact.
One goal there, and I think West Ham crumble.
Yeah, well, as I say, we'll never know. But it felt like one of those games where if Newcastle got a goal back, they could have finished with a flourish. But yeah,
I kind of
not sufficient. I thought the ball must have been too high. The cross might have evaded Wilson, but no, that wasn't
sufficient. Have a word. We'll just dive into the comments. Lowy says, we weren't as good as we thought we were after 3 on the bounce. We aren't as bad as we think we are now. Every team is the same this season. Yeah. No one other than Liverpool is winning consistently. But that makes it even more frustrating. You know, because you build up consistency.
It can. It also, but there's also a point to look at it and think, look, everyone else is struggling around us.
Is that a defense or
no? It's not a defense, but it's a silver lining.
I mean, a massive you're grasping there.
Yeah, I am. But come on, we've just spent 49 minutes being negative. I'm looking for some positivity to bring it back round. Nobody apart from Liverpool has been consistent. I mean, in the last 5 games, Liverpool have won 4, but then you've got City have won 2 of them. Chelsea won 2 of them. Arsenal won 1. Brighton 3. Tottenham 3. Forest 3.
I don't care. I
Newcastle
don't
2.
care.
I know, but I'm.
That's like, right, that is like you getting a fine for going in the bus lane, and then your excuse is, oh, well, he's gone and done it.
No, it's not.
It is.
No, it's not.
Just because other teams aren't consistent, you're saying, oh, that's all right then.
No, but I'm not disagreeing that it's a missed opportunity. Of course it is. If Newcastle had won that game last night, they'd be 2 points off second. I know that. But what I'm saying is they'll be looking at that league table and thinking, well, look, everybody else is struggling. So we haven't really fallen behind.
Oh, man, no, come on. Let's not set those standards. Oh, yeah, okay, we lost to West Ham, but it's all right. Here's a comfort
No,
blanket.
I'm not saying it's all right to lose to West Ham. That, again, you've spent the full episode
you're
twisting my words here.
You're using it as a defense. Like, it's
I'm
not
not
as bad
using
as
it as a defense.
it's not as bad as a defeat because everyone else has
I'm
been
trying
a
to
bit
bring a
this
little
season.
bit of positivity to what's been a negative podcast. That's what I'm doing, Mr. Musgrove.
But as Lousy says right after his point here, any team that goes on a run of 3 or 4 or 5 wins on the bounce will jump up the table significantly, which is exactly why this is such a frustrating.
And you know why they'll do
result.
that? Because everyone else is losing, so they're still in touch.
Kevin says, why exactly this is why last night's defeat was such a disaster. Golden chance to be 1 point off the top 4, and we blew it. Peter says it looked a bit like the lads wanted it a bit too much. The talent comes out when players are relaxed. Willick couldn't trap a bag of cement last night. He's usually excellent. We've got Graham saying Wan-Bissaka ran past both Bruno and Joelinton for the second. Kelly pondered the first. Niall says even if Kelly had a worldie, he wouldn't have started over Burn against Palace, which I agree. John asks, do you think it's time to take Bruno out of the team and start Tonali? He seems to be making too many mistakes, and in John's opinion, it's costing Newcastle.
No.
Keep Bruno in. What happens on Saturday in the midfield? Bring Tonali in?
It depends on. I mean, Bruno limped off. Willock limped off. Are we going to see enforced changes like we did last night?
If everyone's fit?
I think you keep the same team that started last night, bar Burn for Kelly.
Okay, so it's Tonali on the bench again. Interesting. Let us know in the comments.
Joelinton, Willock, Hall down the left as a trio.
Gary says the mentality of the club needs to change. We need to provide the manager different options. To do this, PIF need to stop being a doormat for the league and other clubs and go to court so we can spend, which is, I suppose, the opinion of quite a few people. Kevin says is the reason why nobody came in and paid 100 million for Bruno in the summer. He makes too many mistakes to be a world-class player. The perception of him is better than the reality. Thoughts on that one?
Look, I think you'll get those type of comments when Bruno has a bad game, but then we can't forget he's been fantastic the last couple of weeks in those 3 wins. So again, I think you just need to maybe zoom out with comments like that. Kevin
says, pay 45 million now for Gay. No more. We can't mess about in January. He's not worth more. Palace will be tempted as he's out of contract. I think it's next June, not this June. Yeah, he's out of contract. Graham says the squad needs fresh blood. It has stagnated with no new ideas. It's a natural growth that is missing. I agree with that. You need new players in to not only excite those that are still here, but to push them.
Yeah,
to drive
just
them.
To freshen things up.
Yeah, because everyone, not just fans, but players as well, are very excited when new players do arrive into the dressing room. Come on, then we are now going to do a bit of trivia.
Finally, some more positivity, because this went down a real treat last week, didn't it? Our what am I calling it? Winner Stays On.
Winner Stays On.
For those who didn't watch last week's pod, we did Winner Stays On with Newcastle United midfielders, where Andrew gave his expert opinion as to who was better in a Newcastle United shirt. So this time we're going to do attackers. Again, it's not who was better in their career. It's not your favourite. It's just who performed better for Newcastle, and the winner stays on.
Just to clarify, with it being attackers, I'm assuming you've taken one person out.
Yeah, so I must say, no Alan Shearer, because obviously Alan Shearer would win. I've gone for mostly strikers, a few who maybe class as wingers, but they're attackers.
Okay, let's do this.
Let's go. So we're going to start with Obafemi Martins, and he goes up against Peter Lovenkrands.
Oh, Martins for me.
Martins against Mark Viduka.
Martins.
I know he didn't perform at Newcastle, but I just loved Mark Viduka, proper Bartley striker. Anyway, Martins or Michael Owen?
Oh, do you know? I know Michael Owen gets a lot of stick. His goal record, considering the injuries, aren't that bad. And you do think what might have been with him and Shearer. I mean, is there really too much difference between the two players in terms of the goals scored? Do you know what? Michael Owen.
Controversial. Okay, Michael Owen or Alexander Mitrovic.
Mitrovic, what, scored 9 goals? So, you've got to go Michael Owen, haven't you?
Michael Owen or Loic Remy, one season wonder.
13, 14 goals for Newcastle.
Player that left too soon if you watched our pod last
Yeah,
week.
also that went after the money check, didn't he, with QPR?
Oh, such a good player.
I've got myself in a terrible hole.
You are literally, I mean, I really thought Michael Owen wouldn't get past.
Go on then, Michael Owen.
Okay, Michael Owen. Michael Owen or Dwight Gale.
Dwight Gale.
Finally, we get rid of Michael Owen. Dwight Gale or Craig Bellamy. That's a great matchup. Great matchup.
Them in the same team.
Yeah.
We didn't have any height, but you'd certainly have a bit of speed. Oh, it's difficult.
That's a tough one.
No, I'm going to go Bellamy.
Okay, Craig Bellamy or, I mean, you've got two eras to choose from here. Craig Bellamy or Andy Carroll.
Bellamy.
Okay, Craig Bellamy or Salomon Rondon.
Oh, hello.
Because you're a real fan of Rondon, aren't you?
Yeah, but I'm just going to go Bellamy basically because he aided Shearer so much. Like I mean, obviously Alan Shearer was such a brilliant player for Newcastle United, but what Bellamy gave him kind of helped him prolong his career and I don't want to say took him to the next level, but you know what I mean? Kind of cemented him at the top.
He was an elite player. I loved Craig Bellamy. Again, another one who should have made it in that team last week. Craig Bellamy or Demba Ba?
Bellamy.
Craig Bellamy or Ayoze Perez? Because you're a big Ayoze Perez fan.
I told you we should have brought him back.
Yeah.
He scored 10 and 10.
He's Spain's number 9 now.
He's lighting up the La Liga, isn't he? It's difficult that because you've got the Champions League night, you've got the night in Rotterdam, but then Perez really finished his career strongly at Newcastle United. And probably without Perez in that side, would Newcastle United have been, I don't want to say relegated, but certainly closer to the bottom than they were with him in form. Oh, that's difficult. It's better for Newcastle. It's the one who performed better.
In a Newcastle shirt.
Oh, man. No, I've got to stick with Bellamy.
Craig Bellamy stays on. Craig Bellamy or Papis Cisse?
Cisse.
Papis Cisse or Shola Amiobi?
Oh, Shola.
Shola Amiobi or Les Ferdinand?
Les Ferdinand.
Les Ferdinand or Andy Cole?
Oh, I thought we could have just have a love party here for a love party. That's a bit of a strange. A love letter here for Les Ferdinand. Raise up the eyebrows. Hello. And you're giving us Andy Cole. Les Ferdinand.
Les Ferdinand or Callum Wilson?
Les Ferdinand.
Les Ferdinand or Alexander Isak?
Oh, better. Yeah, Sir Les. Alexander Isak has got to aspire to be at the level of Les
Final answer?
Yeah.
There you go. Les Ferdinand wins.
I'm glad we managed to deviate away from Michael Owen there.
Yeah. I think that was for context, I put that list together 2 minutes before we came on air, and I think that was a good matchup. So Les Ferdinand wins. I'm dying to know what people have said in the comments. I hope you're getting some stick for your Michael Owen loving.
No, not yet, but I'm sure once people catch up, they will do. Just want to finish on this question. Where's it gone? It's about Sandro Tonali. I've moved the comments down there because you want to see who people were picking in your bit of trivia. Anyway, the comment was, here we go from Michael. The team should be built around Tonali. If not, why did we buy him?
I think you can look back to the summer 23 and think, okay, we need a really good centre midfielder. And I think on paper, everyone thought that centre midfield 3 to go into the years to come was going to be Tonali, Bruno, Jolit. And we obviously know that hasn't really worked out as a trio, apart from in maybe brief flashes. In terms of building the team around him, I feel for Tonali because, he's been good this season since coming back. He's flying for it. At least he's their main man. They're building that team around him and they look better for it. And, he has his best game for months in a Newcastle shirt against Chelsea and he finds himself out the team. They've got to find a way to try and get him and Bruno to play together.
I just don't know if there's a solution.
But then again, it goes back to, sorry, I don't know, I can't remember the name, but whoever's question it was, do we get to a point, if Newcastle keeps struggling, where people say, right, well, it's got to be one or the other? Do you sell Bruno if it means building a team around Tonali? I don't know. But I think maybe fans would be on board with that. you've got to find a way of getting them together. But the reason I said I would keep Tonali on the bench for Palace is because I really like that midfield three of Bruno, Longstaff, and then either Joelinton or Willock. It's worked. I want to see it work again. I love the fact that Willock and Hall excel down the left.
Only work when you are playing as a counter-attacking side.
No.
If a team low blocks you
No.
and says, come and attack us, does Sean Longstaff have the ability to unpick a defence? You know, are you, in terms of if you're asking who the better ball-playing midfielder is, who's the better pass of the ball, Tonali or Longstaff?
Yeah, of course, but you could guarantee that if that happens at Palace on Saturday and they lose, they'll say, oh, well, Longstaff's the glue. Longstaff does the dirty work. Bruno is there to unpick the passes. Willock and Joelinton and Lewis Hall unpick the passes. Tino Livramento, Longstaff's there to be the balance. He counteracts all that. He does the stuff that you don't see, the passes that you don't see. So
I just wonder whether Willock as well, does he work in a I mean, I'm not really sure how Palace will play on Saturday. Someone will tell us in the comments whether they're possession based or not. But if Palace do say at Newcastle, you're going to have to attack us, which I don't think they do. I think Palace will try and control the game, especially at home. But for instance, last night it was very much Newcastle had the ball and had to do something with it. That kind of stuns what Willock does, because it's not fast, it's not full of pace, it's kind of pass it around, patient build up. Whereas when you're a counter-attacking Newcastle United side,
and he gets to drive the ball forward.
Get the ball to Willock on the edge of your box and he's away. That's where he's flying forward. So that instance,
but he's had two really good performances in the last 2 weeks against Chelsea at home and Arsenal at home. And would you say either of those two really set up with a low block?
No, but that's what I'm saying. They were more counter-attacking Newcastle's performances. I mean, against Arsenal had the majority of the ball, right? So they had the majority of the ball. So Newcastle had limited of it. I would say so.
Nah, I don't think. I think Newcastle had more of the ball in the win against
Arsenal.
I might be wrong, but anyway, I can't sit on this pod when they win and say I love that midfield three, and then they lose at West Ham, and I say I want to change it. I really think it works. And for whatever reason, unfortunately, Tonali, Joelinton, and Bruno hasn't worked. And I understand that there's probably people in the comments right now and people listening to this saying you've got to find a way to get Tonali in the team. I'm not saying you can't. He's a fantastic footballer. I feel for him because he's had such a good run of games, but I just don't see how him and him and Bruno work. The only time we've really seen them impress together this season, off the top of my head, is City at home.
Sorry,
I was adamant Newcastle had more
Newcastle
possession in
had
that game.
36% against Arsenal. It was more than they usually do.
Right.
But that is my point. When Newcastle United have to counter-attack and absorb and hit teams on the counter, it is ready-made for Joe Willock, ready-made for Sean Longstaff because he can sweep up. When they have to have more of the ball like they do against like West Ham, then there's a little bit more of an issue because Joe Willock hasn't got that freedom and space and the drive because it's all patient build-up. But then Eddie Howe hasn't really got the tools to change it. And the only one he has got is Tonali. So it's difficult. But again,
what does he do Saturday?
Well, this is the issue. I'm playing devil's advocate in many ways because I fully expected the three that started against West Ham to start. That was my call, as well as yours, and obviously Eddie Howe's call because they played so well. I'm not going to sit here a week after saying Sean Longstaff's the key to the midfield to get him out because I still think he allows the likes of Bruno and maybe Willock to flourish. It's really difficult because Joelinton, I think, performs really well with Willock behind him and Hall, but I don't think Willock can perform as well in a team that has to have the majority of possession. So there's so many elements that he has to consider. Do you take Willock out, bring Tonali in, but then does that have a knock-on effect on Joelinton? Like, there's so many things going around that it's not just about taking one player out. There's several knock-on effects. But if Palace want to try and dominate the game on Saturday, then if Joe Willock's fit, you keep Joe Willock on the side and you keep Sean Longstaff on the side. We'll get Peltz felt in the comments and obviously Bruno in the middle. If Palace give the ball to Newcastle and say, come on then, I would take Joe Willock out and I'd bring Tonali in, put Tonali in as the 6, Bruno on the other side and Sean Longstaff on the other side of him. And then just I suppose just hoping that Joelinton can somehow connect with Bruno and it works.
On the left of the midfield.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can see it.
Don't
think how does it. But look, it's tough. You know, I don't want to sign Tonali on the bench. I love him. I think he's been fantastic this season, but it's a real head scratcher for Howe as to how he gets him back in the team and gets the best of him. I already know what the comments are.
Well, there's loads of comments.
Sean Staff drops out.
We'll just quickly run through them. Niall says, I honestly think we need to get an attacking midfielder as well. We don't have one. We have a like-for-like player to come on for Willock if he gets injured. Truel says Bruno does the same job as Longstaff does. He plays as a right centre midfielder. Graham says a stronger back four would enable any of the three in the middle. Two young full-backs either side of mediocre centre-backs, which is not the first time that's been mentioned. You know, you bring in a new centre-back who can also have the ball at his feet but step out. That will help the midfield three. Niall says you need a better technician when you have the ball, so Tonali should have started against West Ham. Mr. says this is rubbish about Tonali and Bruno can't play together. It is crazy. Of course they can. Niall says I don't think Eddie knows his best midfield. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I probably would.
Peter says Bruno is a good runner, but he can't sprint. Stephen says apart from the ball to Isaac for the missed chance, every Bruno pass, the ball forward, it was always under hit, and he's been doing that all season. When Tonali passes it forward, it stays hit. And Truel says Longstaff can't sprint either. So it definitely seems like maybe
there's a dilemma.
Well, maybe the tide is shifting. The other question is, has by making Bruno captain, Howe made him undroppable, untouchable? Because that's another question I saw posed.
Potentially.
Dropping your captain, you can get away with it in a cup tie because you can say, I'm rotating you, but dropping him for a league game is a little bit different. Resting him, if you want to say. Has he made him untouchable?
I don't know, because I'm just trying to think back last season when Lascelles was out. Were we having the same conversations about Trippier? Was he staying in the team with Livramento? I mean, I don't know. Yes, potentially there's an argument for that because, if I'm honest, the question that got asked in the comments before, is it time to take Bruno out? The first thing that came to my head is, can you take the captain out of the team? So, yeah, maybe it has.
I don't think you can, and maybe he has made him a little bit untouchable, but we'll wait and see if what the team sheet is on Saturday. I just want to quickly just read off some of the comments that we got about what went wrong yesterday, and then we will sign off. Andy says, players and fans were full of confidence for this game, and we weren't at it until West Ham's goal. After that, we looked a bit rushed, trying to force it. We cannot break down a low block to save our lives. We've got another person saying, we'll sound like a broken record here, but I think we have to build a new identity and shape around the elite players we have now. We literally can't seem to fit Tonali, Barnes, Joelinton or Willock in the starting 11 comfortably, and we have no one on the right wing. We probably need a new goalkeeper too. So not asking for too much there, Aaron. Sean says, bad finish in the first half and a total loss of shape in the second. And Razor says, nothing has changed since Brighton. Gift the opposition an easy goal, then can't break them down. All I saw after Brighton was, on another day, we'll win that comfortably. Yesterday was another day, and we saw exactly the same issues again. It can't be luck or coincidence. Thoughts?
Good point. Again, I'm going to go back to Howe's comments. I think they created enough to not be panic stations, and I think there's probably enough in the performance last night, coupled with the performance of the players that came off the bench, to see give that team another go at Palace.
How long do you say? And I'm in this bracket as well, so people can come at me in the comments. How long do we say they create chances? It's final click before it becomes an issue?
I mean, it's already an issue, but again, they created plenty at Arsenal, plenty at Chelsea, plenty at Forest. So they are creating chances and scoring. They just need to really find their feet, and those big players really need to start with the goals.
Fine margins in it, and just too many players underperforming, and yes, to a degree, letting the manager down, who I think, as we said earlier in the show, set Newcastle up to win that game, and they should have been 3-1 up at half-time. The goal that goes offside, if it's ruled in, if he's onside, we're sitting here talking about a 3 or 4-0 win for Newcastle. As it was, they lost. Thanks to Tom Rennie for making me think Newcastle could not lose that game. They did do so. Hopefully 3 points against Palace on Saturday, though, to make us feel that little bit better. I'll be back in the week with John Gibson and the view from the opposition as well, from our regular Crystal Palace visitor to the podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Give the video a thumbs up. Hit like, hit share, leave us a rating review, get your NORD VPN subscription as well. And for myself and Aaron, I'll see you guys, or we will see you guys very soon.